welcome to Black Docs Talk, Generational Medicine.
I'm Dr. Cynthia Gu.
I'm Dr. Jermaine Hockstrom.
I'm Dr. Jeremy Hockstrom.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Johnson. And this lovely gentleman right here, if we look alike, it's because this is my Faja, Dr. Robert Johnson. Welcome.
Dr. Johnson.
Good moment. Good moment.
How long have you been practicing?
50 years.
Wowzers.
That's a long time.
That is a very long time.
And what medical school did you go to?
Went to the State University of New York at Downstate.
Wow, at Downstate.
So SUNY Downstate, for all those New Yorkers, they know.
SUNY Downstate. So you graduated in what year?
1971.
1970. What? I wasn't eating it. Oh.
Nope.
Nor was she.
So how was medical school during that time? Or how many Black people did you have in your class?
We had the State University of New York is very large, and Downstate actually at the time was one of the largest medical schools in the country. And there were 200 in my class. And of the 200, 3 of us were Black.
I feel like it's kind of the same still nowadays.
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah.
It is the same.
Yeah. And even I've been reading about how the AAMC, I believe, had that study where it was like 3% of medical students, I believe, were African American, and then I think the male participants have actually declined since the 1970s, and so it's like we're going backwards almost now.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
Dad, tell them how much it costs a year to go to medical school.
Oh.
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, so the State University of New York, the tuition was $800 for the entire year.
Wow.
Yeah, we let them pick up their job.
Wait. If you were an in-state student, you automatically got a $500 scholarship.
So that's really...
So it was $300.
And
there were people in my class who went to the city university system, which was very good, and had zero tuition for that, and then came to Downstate and paid $300 a year for their medical school training. So then they paid $1,200 a year for the entire time.
versus now, we graduate from medical school with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
That doesn't make any kind
Makes no sense. What has
It's too
happened?
much.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Anywhere from like 1 to 300,000, or even 400,000 at times.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And then if you carry over undergraduate loans, which
Right,
can
with
easily
that.
get up to 100,000 too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a thing.
So I know we talk about this, or you hear it on the news all the time, of millennials, why millennials don't want to, don't want to do certain things like start families, but we have all this large debt that we're dragging around. So not to get off on a tangent, but $300.
Now, can I also ask, how much was a board exam
Yeah.
during that?
Yeah, how much was a board exam? Did it cost anything?
I don't remember. It wasn't maybe $100, $200.
Again.
Now they're anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000.
Yeah.
For the PEDS boards, it's what, $2,400.
About $2,400 for the pediatric board exam.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of payment. But yet, one of our exams is the most expensive. So it doesn't make any sense.
No sense.
None.
Whatsoever.
So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we got that out before we move on. Go ahead, Dr. Gu.
So my question was what kind of
Challenges
things
may you have faced during medical school? Yeah, in residency.
Well, medical school.
Medical school first.
Well, the challenge was just getting through the academics and trying to keep a balanced life. For me too, removing myself from certain activities, it was during the civil rights movement, so staying out in the front. And during my medical school, I did, get involved in activist sort of situations, and that took away from, the studies, what I was able to do, academically.
Mm-hmm. So how was that back in the day during civil rights? Because like right now we're doing the Black Lives Matter stuff. Is it kind of similar, or was it more in charms?
Right.
Well, the issues are still the same.
The same, right?
The same.
Yeah.
They're still the same, and they haven't changed for 400 years. I mean, the issues are still there, and they need to be addressed.
Right.
And my approach back then, the civil rights movement was really at its peak when I was in college. And my feeling was that, I needed to apply myself to studies because I wanted to get into medical school.
Yeah.
So I couldn't, take off and engage in the marching to Washington and go down to Mississippi and, march and, get hit in the head, whatever,
Right.
It was,
Absolutely.
but once I got into medical school, we had organizations within the medical students where we did engage in some activities, and I did go down after the Kent State students were shot. We went down to Washington and engaged in that protest. And the thing was, we were supposed to, we had no training, no medical training, because we were first year medical students, second year medical students. And our job was to, we carried bottles of saline to wash people's eyes out with the tear gas.
Yeah.
But that was quite an experience. And the thing that happened there was that, they were concerned about people going onto the White House grounds.
Right.
Yeah.
And they lined up buses around the White House. And there was a lot of no man's land on the other side of these buses. So if you had, there was no mob charging like what happened recently.
Yeah.
You would have to filter through one person at a time, and nobody wanted to be the first person through. So, the White House and Nixon were safe. And then what they did, they let people march all through the streets, and the police stayed out of sight. They sort of marched behind people and let them sort of blow off steam and march all through Washington. There wasn't a big, it wasn't a lot of casualties involved.
Like this time.
But the difference was that, there were white folks doing the marching because it was an anti-war protest. So it was mainly, white students involved in that.
Gotcha.
That's the difference.
I see.
As we saw recently with the Capitol. So,
Right, the Capitol versus the Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wouldn't be the same thing.
So
But-
a question I want to ask is, what was the classroom dynamic like with all these racial tensions going on at that time?
Okay, so, there wasn't a lot of tension among us.
Okay.
But that was because of, where the students came from. They were mainly from the Northeast and from New York. New York has
Oh, right, yeah.
a long tradition. So, we would jump up, when something would happen, in an anatomy lecture, admonish people to get involved in, what we were trying to do. We had something called, it was a student health organization, it was called. We were sort of radical folks. and we would jump up. But we had our own little, the black students sort of, tightly knit. And me and my best friend would, one or two out of the three of us, we sat next to each other in every lecture, during the first 2 years. So we supported each other.
What about the third person? They weren't a close friend.
Well, he was involved in things as well.
Okay.
And, the funny thing about his name was Peter Bryson. He was very fair skinned, and I remember we were doing something at some event, and somebody jumped up and sort of, said, what are you talking about? You're so fair. You don't have any right to get very upset either.
He's like, I'm black as you.
Yeah, it was like that, and he was right to be offended because he faced some of the same challenges we faced. The other challenge was not having mentors, black mentors, and that's what I sort of missed about going to a predominantly, white institution where there were no mentors for us really. Well, I shouldn't say that because it was the interesting thing. The guy that helped us when we formed a committee on minority admissions and get the admissions increased at downstate. The dean of students, his name was Schuyler Cole. Mm-hmm. Okay, his we called him Sky Cool, and he was Jewish. And the interesting thing about him, he had changed his name from Seymour Cohen to Schuyler Cole. Okay?
You went and changed it like legal.
Right. Yeah, and that was to avoid discrimination. So he was an ally. He was definitely an ally, and helped us out, on endeavors and helped us. We formed a committee on minority admissions and got some more black students admitted the following years.
That's good.
So we went from like 3 to 12.
Well, I mean,
And it's still much has not changed.
But I think when I left my fourth year, there were like 18 black students.
that's good. 18 per class.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a big number.
But it's decreased since then.
Yes, it has decreased since then. So like now, what about like rotation? What were rotations like?
Okay.
during that time?
So you on every third night. In some situations, it was every other night. And you took
Torture.
You took call the entire weekend. Okay, so it was every third night, but on the weekend you were there from Friday night until Monday morning.
In the hospital? The whole time?
Depending on if you were in the nursery,
Dun
then
dun
you're in the
dun.
hospital. If you
Duty hour violation.
Duty hour violation.
If you were in ICU, you couldn't leave. You stayed in the hospital.
So literally lived in the
The
hospital.
premature nursery, the head of the department of pediatrics, when the residents asked for a bed so they could sleep, his response was, "You're on call. You're not supposed to sleep during your call."
So 3 days of no sleep sounds very safe to me. Like what?
Yeah. So it was.
Ridiculous.
It got pretty. That was pretty.
Brutal. You could say it, Poppy.
Yeah. Wow. Because I cried with just one call a week.
Yep.
I didn't like doing Q4 call.
Yeah.
I know.
Like,
I mean, even
24-hour
ours.
shift, I'm like, can I just sleep for 1 hour?
For non-medical people, when we say Q4, that means on every fourth day, you're on a 24-hour call, which means you're really there for 28 hours.
Right.
Okay. And that's for us compared to like what my dad is saying, being in the hospital for 3 days straight.
I bet.
And then on Monday you couldn't go home. You had to stay until 4 o'clock.
Wow. See that makes ours look like
Child labor.
Right. No wonder all the attendings are like, suck it up.
Yeah.
That's called
Wow.
hazing.
Nowadays.
Okay?
Bullying.
You're
or something.
online for medicine and you didn't know it.
Wow.
So then you are a pediatrician.
Mhm.
And how did you choose pediatrics?
Oh, there were two things. So I liked the idea that our patients get better.
Yes.
Gotcha.
They get better.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get better very quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
Very quickly. And I had difficulty dealing with death. I really did. Still do.
Yeah.
And that was those were that and the personalities of pediatricians.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
much
yeah.
happier.
Yeah.
I wish you could
They're happy.
In fairness to the internists, the perception that you get in medical school, the third year, that's when you make up your mind as to what you're going to go into. The perception that you get is skewed because you, on internal medicine, you're dealing with the end of
Right.
the final part of something.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in with heart failure due to hypertension. You don't know that he's been somebody's patient for 20 years and they've controlled the hypertension for 20 years and given them 10 extra years. You don't have that perception. You see the guy who has left-sided heart failure from hypertension. You see the guy with lung cancer that dies within 3 days. You see all of this, and it gives you the perception that, man, it's just. And then you have folks like the neurologists who, what I learned in neurology was what prognosis meant. Because, I said to myself, all these guys, they're very intelligent, they're very smart, but all they do is prognosticate.
Mm-hmm.
They go in and tell you where the lesions are, blah, 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 blah. And then the patient, dies in 2 days. So what's the point?
I don't know if it's quite like that right now, Dad. Because internists can also be outpatient physicians too.
Yeah.
They could be outpatient, so they're not stuck in the hospital
Yes.
all day.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that's my point, was that my perception of internal
Oh,
medicine
okay, gotcha.
was based on what I saw in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
And not, because we didn't go into people's offices.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other unique, well, I shouldn't say unique, but it was the thing about New York was that you had no attendings who were not hospitalists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's actually really interesting because, for me, I'm coming into internal medicine, I kind of look forward to more of a clinical, like a long-term basis with patient experience once I finish residency. And so, although we train a lot in the hospital and the clinic, I say at least in our residency, we do get actually a lot of clinical experience. I'll say probably a lot more than the average residency program. But although we train in the hospital, I do still appreciate having that hospital experience, just so I can really know when I eventually start working more in the outpatient setting, like what kind of actually did go on, from a full understanding experience, But yeah, for me, I'm looking more toward an outpatient type of internal medicine experience in a career. So that's my goal.
I do not like being in the hospital.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
It's just so much just critical illness, just like you said. A lot of just critical illness and death, and after a while, sometimes you feel sort of unaccomplished because you see just a lot of death,
Mm-hmm.
And I want to have that more sense of like I could really make an impact, and I think, at least in my view, I can do that more in preventing patients from having to go to the hospital, like keeping them at a good baseline,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pediatrics, they're not all kind.
Yeah, so for
I'm
me,
like, they're cute.
yeah, for
and-
pediatrics, you aren't seeing that necessarily in the hospital. I just don't like the hospital lifestyle.
Yeah.
Although my twin here likes the hospital
I
lifestyle.
like
So I liked building
I don't like
rapport.
I don't like
Yeah.
that.
I like continuity and building the long-term relationship with patients. That's why I did outpatient. she likes to do acute care type of
Yes, I
stuff.
will fix you and send you on your way.
Gotcha.
Never
To
send
me.
them to Dr. Liz.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're doing pediatrics, you were a resident. So where did you do residency?
The same hospital.
The same hospital.
It's a huge
And
hospital.
I
Kings
always-
County Hospital is the largest hospital in the city.
Kings County. You know, when I was out in New York, I used to always hear about Kings County, especially from like the emergency medicine standpoint, because all the gunshot wounds, all that stuff to go to Kings County.
So a lot of stuff.
But we were at the neighboring hospital, Kingsbrook. That's where we did our surgery rotation.
Oh, wow.
It was more of like a geriatric hospital. But yeah. So like, what were some of the common like illnesses you were seeing? Because we always hear about H influenza and meningitis. They always tell us before the vaccine. We used to see this everywhere.
That's been the biggest change in the practice of pediatrics.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why I get upset about
Yeah.
anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
And so we don't see H flu meningitis anymore. Okay. If you were, a resident back in my day, you would see a case of meningitis at least once a week.
That's crazy.
That's
At
what they
least
would
once
say.
a week.
Wow.
H flu, and most of the time it was H flu.
'Cause
And even when you diagnosed them and did everything you did do in a timely manner, a lot of them end up death or, with brain damage or whatever happens. You would see the scariest thing was epiglottitis caused by H flu. That's when the epiglottis gets infected and it swells up like a little cherry and obstructs the airway. So what you did with that was you once you made the diagnosis and there was a big deal differentiating epiglottitis from croup, common croup. Because epiglottitis moved very quickly, very fast. And what you had to do was to get the child intubated, while you were, doing the antibiotics, So the intubation is very difficult. And typically it was done usually by a senior resident or the most senior person with ENT surgeon standing by, done in the emergency and not in the operating room. Because if you weren't able to accomplish the intubation, and you have to do tracheotomy. So that was the most intense situation to be involved with it. You don't see it.
No.
You never see it.
And just to explain what my dad's saying, it's not the flu, Haemophilus influenza B. So it's HIB is what we call it. So when you go to your pediatrician and we're listing the vaccines and we say HIB, we're talking about Haemophilus influenza B, just to clarify.
Yeah, and to drive home a point, when there was a shortage of that vaccine, okay, this was maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and the American Academy of Pediatrics delayed giving the booster dose from 12 months to 15 months. Within 2 months, you started seeing Haemophilus influenza again in Pennsylvania.
Just that fast?
That fast.
Wow.
Okay. So these organisms, they haven't, disappeared.
They're still around.
They're still around.
They're still
Yeah.
there.
I've only seen HIB one time, and that was actually in Pennsylvania, and it was in I guess you would say like mid-20s, late 20s, guy who just moved to the United States, and he came in and he could not speak, and he was tripoding.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, that's redonkulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the meningitis and you say that you'll see at least once a week, here I am, I'd say, almost at the end of my second year residency, and at least for us, internal medicine, I still have yet to see one actual meningitis case. As many lumbar punctures as we do.
Done.
Can't find one.
We speculate a lot. We always try to anticipate. Could this person with a seizure and a fever be meningitis? But it's not very common.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, the other cause of meningitis was pneumococcus,
Mm-hmm.
and you would occasionally see a pneumococcal meningitis, but you'd also see a lot of pneumonias they were caused by pneumococcus, and often they were accompanied by septicemia, pneumococcal septicemia. You don't see that anymore.
No, you don't see any of that
You
anymore.
don't see it anymore.
And you'd also
So-
see measles,
So,
right? Some-
measles, I didn't see much. Measles. I did see one child with measles who had recovered from measles encephalitis, and child was off the chain as far as my background is concerned.
Dad used slang. I don't know who taught him this slang. He said
Well,
off the chain.
Measles is no joke. Measles is one of those infectious diseases that, kill thousands and thousands of people. Native Hawaiians had a mortality rate of 50%.
Wow.
Measles.
That's really
Okay,
high.
when that population encountered measles. I was reading lately, Native Americans, in the first 100 years from the time Europeans arrived, they lost 90% of the population.
After the Europeans.
Yeah. It was mostly due to smallpox.
Yep. Well, I was going to
Well,
make another
that's a
point, but
diversion.
yes, that's a different topic. We talked about that yesterday. But yeah, what did you say that number when we were at the museum? They went from, what was
There was
the?
66 million Native Americans here at the time Christopher Columbus. Okay, there were 66 million people
And they went down to
living
what?
into the Western Hemisphere.
Really?
And they went down to what number?
66 million.
Wow.
From smallpox and other diseases.
From the Europeans.
And just and violence. Okay, so
Diseases
It's
and
mainly
violence.
disease.
mainly disease.
From the Europeans.
Vaccinate your
The
children.
rest of the world.
Vaccinate your children. Yes. So
Wow.
Crazy.
my dad has the facts.
So you got through residency. Finally. You graduate. And then how did you...
Well,
so did you...
well, my residency was actually interrupted by a 2-year tour of active duty in the Navy.
Oh.
Oh, you did that too? Oh, what did you not do?
Everybody. Everybody did it. Okay?
Yeah.
It was during
Okay.
the Vietnam War,
Uh-huh.
and there was something called a draft.
Oh.
Okay, and it's like medical people were not exempted.
Really?
Okay, no.
Like,
In fact, you were in a different class. When I went down to do my induction physical, I have atopic disease. That's what my daughter's sneezing all the time.
Gotcha.
Thank you for that. But when I went down, I have eczema. I've had eczema all my life. When I went down for my induction physical, in Manhattan, Whitehall Street, the guy had stamped on my physical OCS, which is Officers Candidate School. Okay, and so I go in and he looks at my scan and says, "Oh, you have eczema. You have eczema. 4F. You can't go into Officers Candidate School."
Oh.
And then
so your eczema saved you.
well, no. Then I told
Oh.
him I was going into the medical corps.
Uh-huh.
He said, "Oh, no problem."
We'll take you
You
gladly.
just had to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It would have caught on eventually. But yeah, you had a choice. You could finish your residency and do 2 years, or the second choice was to join after a year of internship and residency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm a procrastinator. I got my application in late, and I got the second choice.
I also got that from him. Procrastination.
After 1 year of residency or internship, it was a straight pediatric internship, but on active duty.
How was that?
I learned to see patients really fast. And I was a general medical officer,
Uh-huh.
so we saw everybody.
Everybody, all ages.
I don't
Yeah,
wanna
the
see adults.
military was like, you're a doctor.
Yeah. It doesn't
Period.
matter.
Yeah, you're a doctor, so and we used to stand watch in a what was amounted to be sort of a minor emergency room, and that was really quite an experience.
What was like the most interesting thing you saw while you were out there? Where did you go?
Okay, so I was at Naval Station Oceana, which is in Virginia Beach.
7 cities.
And this sailor, he'd been busted twice.
Oh.
You know, misbehaving, and his rent reduced, and they were picking him up from base housing because he was drunk and unruly and whatnot. He got combative in the ambulance, so combative that they let him out onto the highway, right?
Like, you know, I get out.
And then he proceeded to walk along the road and decided he would cross the highway. And did one of these, a car came along, you know, split his pelvis open
Oh, wow.
like a book. Completely severed his femoral artery.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
And then they brought him to me.
The pediatrician. I'd be like,
They went back and picked him up and brought him to me.
Oh, God.
So,
They're like, didn't we just
so
let
you
this
know,
guy out?
yeah.
like, man, come on.
So yeah, we started 2 IVs, you know, and
Two
you know,
large bore
loading them up with fluid, and you know, and loading them back in the ambulance and took them up to Virginia Beach General Hospital. And I remember the surgeon scratching his head and saying, "You sure his pupils were still, you know, reactive?"
Right.
Because he didn't want to take him to the OR.
Yeah.
Because he knew he was not going to survive.
Yeah,
you know.
that's major.
He was just like,
Wow.
you know, do I have to?
Yeah.
Yeah, doc, he's still got a small pulse too. And,
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
he
That's
didn't
crazy.
survive that.
Yeah.
You know, but the surgeon had to take him to the OR. So that was that, and another young man had fallen off a motorcycle, and he came in fully conscious and so forth, and his skin had been peeled back, you know, off of his forearm. You see all the muscles.
He fell off his motorcycle.
Yeah.
Wear your safety gear, kids.
Yeah.
Don't ride motorcycles.
Wear your helmet, elbow pads, knee
Just
pads.
don't ride a motorcycle.
Yeah, that too.
So
Oh
did
my
you have to shoot all that back together, or what did you?
The
No, I
skin
sent him
really
down there
sounds
to
good.
Naval Hospital.
Oh, okay.
It's
Okay.
something wrong.
Gotcha.
Okay. So then you got your residency. So how did you choose? Did you start your own practice right away, or did you like work for someone first?
I worked for someone first.
Mm.
He was really shit.
Oh.
Well, none of us are.
Right.
That's good.
So-
So they talk bad about him.
Yeah. Yeah, none of us are.
None of
We
us
just
are
happen
from
to be in Michigan
Temporarily.
temporarily. Okay, then you started your own practice.
No, I was his employee.
No, I mean after you worked for him, though.
Then I went to, I worked for the Children's Hospital. I was the director of their ambulatory care.
Oh,
Did
I didn't
that
know
for
that
a
about
year.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how would you say that, like, your all this experience from the military and then even some of the things in medical school with the civil rights, how would you say this is like translated to your clinical practice, like your everyday life?
Okay, so basically you want to serve your community, and in many ways you're forced to serve your community because people are going to accept you in the same ways that they accept their compadres. And so I made decisions, like when I finished my residency, one of my close friends in residency wanted me to come out, on Long Island because he was starting a practice there. He said, "Johnson, would you come, Long Island?" I thought to myself, I said, "There's nothing in the world except, a black pediatrician on Long Island, where he was going." So I came, I wanted to come south. You know, at that time, a lot of individuals were leaving the north and coming to the south. And so I was looking to come south. And my intention was to, you know, serve the community and serve Black folks. That was my intention.
That's my intention too.
Yeah.
So somewhere in your story you had children and 3 others.
Yeah.
So how was it?
I am your favorite.
So, and Elizabeth came along a long time after all this was done. We had our first child. I was an intern, and my wife got pregnant. And in fact, during my internship, she got pregnant again with our second child. So, yeah.
Matthew and Denise. Denise was born November 1971, and Matthew was born December 1972.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So that was between calls and long weekends and
Yeah.
And how was that? How did you, for all the people out there who are trying to balance
Well,
like having a family?
right.
Actually, you know, the physician I went into partnership with later in my career, she had, I think, 2 children during her residency. And we, you know, it was common to, I remember this, when I came back to New York and was finishing up my pediatric residency, I was a senior resident, and there was a junior resident who was, we all called it nursery. And she was like 9 months pregnant, and I was like, you know, she worked until she started going in labor. And the only reason she left the floor,
I'm like, someone pushed me around.
only reason she left the floor was because I insisted. I said, don't worry about doing the history on this one. I'll take care of it. You go over to INT and you know, have your baby. So yeah, we my baby firstborn was born in November, and I had started my residency, I guess, in July. So it was during residency, and then my wife got pregnant again in February. So when we came down to Norfolk to serve as General Medical Officer, that's when we had our second child.
So Denise was the only child born in New York.
Yeah.
The rest of us are Virginians.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how was it balancing like your family or, you know, having...
Well, that was always the difficult part of it. And it really depends, I guess, on, for a male, it depends on what your attitude is, you know, towards your family. You know, if you're the type of individual that, you know, thinks your wife should stay home and do the dishes and raise the kids, you know, so forth. Probably
I don't
not.
like those type of men.
Yeah. Probably not a big deal for me.
Right. No
But
thanks.
for me, it was a big deal, and I didn't like particularly taking call and staying in the hospital. I really, that was difficult for me. And my wife is an excellent mom. And actually, after you know, she gave birth and whatnot. She's a nurse and she went to work part-time. You know, and I guess what we have babysitters or something? I don't know.
My mom's in the background, guys. She's not just talking to a wall. Yeah. You had family support, right, Mom? She shakes her head yes.
But she would work on weekends. You know, if I was off, she would go and work at St. Vincent's Hospital, which was downtown Manhattan. And, so that's what we did.
Made it work.
Yeah. And you know, there are times when you have to sort of choose. And I forget when my wife was being released from the hospital with my daughter, I was on call that particular day, or I was finishing call, whatever it was. And I had one more patient to see, one more patient to work up. And I remember my senior resident, sort of running behind me, no, you gotta finish this patient. I said, no, I don't.
Right, no.
Talk to the hand.
Right,
Bye.
right.
Dad's left.
I would have been out too, like,
I
no.
walked off the floor.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could do that nowadays, but
Well, technically.
you're like, I don't know.
Like, nah, I'm going home, I'm done.
Well, it wasn't unreasonable request.
Right, yeah.
Because when we got overwhelmed, there were some nights when we had to handle 10 admissions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get behind, it was the senior resident's job
To help out.
to help out and take those admissions and work them up.
Yeah.
So that was a common practice.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
like,
didn't
you can
think,
handle this one so I can go get my baby.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So speaking of admissions, what was, you said it was about 10, I guess, and back in that time, what was considered like a heavy admission load? 10? 10? Okay.
I think it's pretty much the same nowadays, right?
We can get up to 20.
That is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
we can get up to 20.
But back in their day,
But
though,
back
they had
then-
to write stuff.
But yeah, if it's writing,
We get to type things and
yeah,
dictate
and
things.
dictate, which makes it better.
I'm
To
a
some
very
degree.
slow typer. I feel like
I-
this.
I-
So I might as well be writing. So.
With the paper charts and stuff. And I'm thinking of like all the admissions and all the labs that we have to get. Did you guys like get a lot of labs and like imaging? And
well, the problem with, the city hospital that we worked at, they didn't have a lot of ancillary, help. So we had to draw most of our labs. We had to, stick the babies, and you were expected to, do all those before rounds and whatnot. So that was quite challenging. And you oftentimes had to take patients down to X-ray, and, sort of ridiculous stuff, that you just don't deal with now.
I was gonna say, I was like,
well, okay.
In COVID
like
land,
Dad.
in COVID land, things have changed a
And
little bit.
in our hospital. Yeah, I feel like we're going back to that where they're trying to get rid of all the ancillary staff. So now we're having to do that now. Take patients down and get their x-rays.
Well, I think that's a big mistake, because to be honest with you, lab technicians who know what they're doing,
Yeah,
much better, if you need a phlebotomist,
yeah.
people who are skilled at starting IVs, all those sort of things,
Right, necessary.
are, when you have people who are skilled at it and doing it, it just improves care.
Yeah,
You can't, you shouldn't go back,
I
because
agree.
it would-
teamwork is important, and every single person that's part of the healthcare team is
It's
important.
important.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Every person counts,
Mm-hmm.
and especially now when you need it most.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference.
Definitely. So, Dr. Johnson, Little Johnson,
Who is standing in
went
that
to
city.
med school.
I did go to med school.
And how did you feel about that, senior Dr. Johnson?
Oh, very proud.
But you tried to talk me out of medicine.
Oh.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. I'm not just sneezing. Well, you didn't try to talk me out of it, but you really, really made sure that it was what I was wanting to do for myself and not for anybody else.
Yeah, I wasn't one of these individuals. In fact, when my oldest daughter, was pre-med for a while, and when she went off to college, she told me, "Oh, Dad, I'm gonna be pre-med." And I thought to myself, I don't know if I voiced it, but I thought to myself, I said, "Well, if you told me that 3 years ago, I would have helped you more in your chemistry and stuff that you were studying, And so no, I didn't push my kids.
No, he did not push us to do that. In fact, he encouraged us to do whatever we would like. Because I wanted to be a marine biologist, so he would buy me different National Geographic books and whatever I was interested in. This is why we could win Cash Cab or Jeopardy.
I see.
Yeah,
So then
because
how-
you know all these little facts from whatever we changed our mind
You know what
to.
I learned recently? That there's fish that like jump out the water because I saw them when I was in San Diego. Shout out to California. And
They're called
And they,
flying
like,
fish.
yeah, and they're like jumping out
We
the
have
water,
them here too.
and they like. Well, they're better in
Just as
California.
bad.
Basically, my dad's saying the East Coast has it too.
But they were jumping out the water, and I was like, how is it that they're able to like jump out the water? Because we can't do that, as humans.
Did you try? Are you trying to reveal that you tried?
No, I learned how to swim.
You don't know how to swim?
No, but
Oh, we're planning a
even
trip down then to Virginia Beach, and we're going to do swim lessons.
But
Right,
even
Poppy?
even if we do the flipping, right? We have the flippers on. We still are not able to like
Yeah.
jump out the
Well,
water like.
there,
you have to-
there are a lot of interesting things about animal physiology.
Yeah.
No, we're
so
not
like-
going to go. We're not going to. Do not open that can for my dad because he will tell you about all things animals.
But
And
it was
gets back to-
it's so amazing. I was just like, why do they do that? And you'll have ones who like will jump a lot higher. And then we looked it up, and they said because of mating. So I guess if you jump higher, then you're like stronger or something.
Oh, okay.
And then they could just do it because they're bored. I mean, all they do is swim down the water.
No, it's time for me to jump out the water now. No, but
And then
he-
they want to get like food sometimes. But it was just crazy because I was just walking along the water and I heard this big splash and I was like, what is that? And I saw this thing like.
And that was, and then you had squirrels, Squirrels getting.
oh, you had the squirrels fighting. Remember you sent us videos.
Oh yeah. There was the squirrels weren't fighting. There was these crows that were trying to attack the squirrel.
Oh yeah, that squirrel was hiding.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope the squirrel lost. But anyway, that's only because there's a squirrel that's intimidating me in the back
Gosh.
of my yard. So
Look, you're gonna have all
I just
these
want you to
photos
zoom
coming
into
after you.
yeah. No, I hope PETA does not send us. We love all animals, but this squirrel in particular has taken over my backyard and will not allow me to enter my back door. Okay, and he finds me every morning at 7:15 a.m.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did to him, but I don't want any smoke. But no, my dad encouraged all of us to explore different things that we liked. He even supported me when I was little. I don't know if you remember this, but I started a Save the Worm Foundation because I was very upset that when it would rain, all the worms would come out and then they would get eaten by all the birds.
And that's
I know it's part of life, but I just felt like it wasn't fair. So I would go up and try to gather up all the worms and then bury them later. Little did I know I was probably suffocating and putting them back into the ground like that. But basically, my dad let us explore whatever we were interested in. At that time,
we
we
were
were
excited though when you got into med school.
And he encouraged us to do all things science, right? He encouraged us to explore, and you built up our imagination. That's why I could have sworn I created tar one time in the yard. I did not.
Oh.
I just took some gravel and water and was like,
Cement.
tar. I just thought it was that, but
Gotcha.
yeah, you did that for all of us. Or you would quiz us when we were outside in line at Busch Gardens about different science and trees and things like that. You'd get $1 if you could name the species of the tree. I would never get the $1.
Yeah, I love biology.
No, I
I
would
have a
never
lot
get
of
the
plants.
$1 at all. I wouldn't. My brother Alex would always get the money or something like that. I was just like, I don't know what tree this is. I don't know. But yeah, and then you were excited when I guess I went to bed. Not I guess, he was.
It was exciting, yeah.
And my dad hooded me at my graduation.
That's nice. That's nice.
That was great.
That's nice. Did he also do the white coat at the white coat ceremony, things like that?
No, I don't think they.
We were there. I don't think.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess for us,
Gives that honor.
You know, I can't remember if there was a choice. Going back to something, like I said, I inherited from my dad procrastination. So I probably could have handed something in and did not remember to do it. But graduation, I was like, this is big. I'll remember that.
Absolutely.
I actually almost missed that deadline too.
Oh,
Well,
It worked out.
the key word is almost.
Almost.
So you did not miss.
I live on edge, okay?
What advice do you have for like the younger generation of doctors that are like me?
yes, with all your wisdom and experience.
Yeah.
And,
How do we get through this? How do you not fight everybody?
all right. I did not throw hands.
I mean,
How told you, you're not gonna chop people. You master a really good side eye.
Well,
Maybe.
you know, it's a wonderful career, you know, and I went into it to help people, and you know, if you want to help people, it's a career that you should follow. You know, follow your heart and do it. You know, it's demanding, but it's very rewarding. You know, what you said about internal medicine, about developing relationships, that's been one of the most rewarding parts of my career. You know, watching kids grow up, and they grow up and then they bring their kids to you, and you know, I have grand patience. You know, and that's really one of the things that's been most rewarding. Looking back on my career too, is the parts that get your adrenaline pumping. I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and you know, just you know, diving in and knowing that you're making a difference, that you're saving a life, that you're you know, snatching somebody from the jaws of death. You know, that is quite something to be able to do. And I know you're doing neonatology, so you'll get a lot of opportunity to do that. And yeah, every day. And that looking back on that's one of the highlights for me was, and the only reason I didn't go into neonatology because at the time we were losing a lot of babies.
Yeah.
And that made it, you know, with my the way I felt about it. And the thing that was so hard was to work for 2 or 3 weeks and you say, well, this one's gonna make it. And then, you know, you go off call, come back, and baby's gone. That was difficult, emotionally difficult. But that's part of medicine, you know, being able to deal with that. That's why this COVID situation is so awful.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, people, you know, doing everything that they know how to do, and it not being enough. You know, it's really hard, but sometimes you have to realize that you do not control everything. Somebody else controlling everything, and it's not you. You know, so you know, it's important to understand that.
Yeah.
So my advice would be to, you know, do what you do. Do what you do.
Do what you do.
And be aware too that there are a lot of issues now in medicine. You know, reimbursement, you know, who's controlling it. You know, why does the United States spend 25% of its GNP on medical care, and France spends 5%, Germany spends 5%, and they have the same outcome?
Yeah.
Why?
Sometimes better.
Why? Yeah, sometimes better. Why did so many black people die during this COVID epidemic? You know, all the health inequities, the disparities, you know, the untreated hypertension, you know, the food deserts, all of these situations, all of these things that affect us as black people, you know, they need to be addressed, and you know, you guys need to be a part of it, and just the management of medicine. What concerns me most is physicians relinquishing their control of their business, and people telling you how to practice, and so forth and so on. Actually the best managers of a small business or any sort of enterprise is an owner-manager. If you own it, you will do the best job of managing it. And right now, you know, like physicians want to just treat their patients. You know, I had that desire to just come to work, see my patients, get them well, and go home. I didn't want to have anything to do with the business part of it.
Yep.
And that's, you know, that's
me too.
that has drawbacks.
Yeah.
Because the people who are taking care of the business don't always have your interest at heart,
Right.
and they don't have the patient's interest at heart.
Right. Because their mindset is just business.
Right, business and money,
Right.
okay? And right now, there are too many thumbs in the pie.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes what I say is what the business side fails to realize is that if you make it a true partnership, then it'll be a fluid business. You know,
Right,
if you
yeah.
really take the time to communicate on all sides and get everybody's perspective, then it will be a true business and a probably even more successful business at that.
Right.
But there's a lot of times I've noticed there's this sort of like there's people behind the closed doors making decisions without any clinical input at all, and very problematic.
Right.
You know?
That's why I'm retiring and moving to St. Lucia.
Well,
Did you know this, Dad?
Oh, yeah. St. Lucia's not a good choice.
What? What's wrong with St. Lucia? No,
Zanzibar.
I don't want to go to Zanzibar. My plan was St. Lucia. I don't know why I picked it. It's very pretty, but
I've been there. It's not a good choice.
okay. No offense to anybody who lives in St. Lucia who's watching us, but I'm still coming. Maybe my dad won't be joining me, but whatever. Anyway, well, this has been a great discussion, guys.
It was a good discussion.
Thanks for joining us, Baja. We just had a good
You're
time.
welcome.
Anything else? Any last things, guys, before we wrap this up? No? Or that was me wrapping it up?
Yeah, wrapping it up.
Well, thanks for joining us and stay tuned for another Black Docs Talk.
Thank you. Catch us on YouTube,
Oh, yeah.
Instagram,
Instagram.
Facebook.
And look out for our future podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Wait, bye, Dad.